Hello and welcome, Exiles, to my thoughts on the Krangle Event. I want to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. The event was something where you could take the entire passive exile tree, scramble it to the high heavens, take the ascendancies, throw them in a mixing pot, and just stir them all up, and then give it to the players. In concept, it sounds pretty cool. Having a randomized tree all out the window sounds like it could be neat, sounds like it could be cool. Getting Tailwind on a Raider, plus the Onslaught from Guardian, which I think is arguably technically a better Onslaught node than Raider's normal Onslaught node, barring you can get allies that are up all the time, which is, that's, okay, it makes it a little bit harder to solve. I will give you that. But point is, you get some neat, awkward, or new combinations that could be like, man, I could really cook something up cool. That's the concept of the basically the event. Now, the event was pitched as a race team event, along with all the other race team events, but I think we know now people don't care about doing a race team event. If these events are going to help satiate the PoE player base to wait an extra month for the next league, they have to be targeted towards the PoE player base. It has to be an event that everyone can join and there can be a trade economy and people can have fun together. Now, that being said, the good. Mixing up ascendancies, super incredibly cool. The fact you could get something like on Juggernaut. Juggernaut has the ability to get Pious Path and Nature's Boon. Two pinnacle ascendancy points that I think are very, very cool and could lead to some very fun, interesting combinations and make a really cool character. That's what I think, right? That's a lot of cool stuff there. There's a lot of cool combinations. Your mind just starts going and going and going and thinking, what can I make in this? Unfortunately, because the tree is scrambled, and I mean scrambled, the small nodes, the masteries, the notables, everything, even though you have some really cool possible combination of ascendancy points, you're never really going to get to enjoy them, because at base, even if you picked your 4 best perfect ascendancy nodes to be together, your character is still going to suck. And the reason it's still going to suck is, quite frankly, the tree is too weak. A large part of player power comes from your passive tree. And it's frankly, even if you know 100% where every single node is, the entire tree is revealed, the scramble is too much of a negative. I'm going to go through why. Quite frankly, the small passives are powerful. Like, for example, I'll pull up a path of building to give you guys what I'm talking about, give you a little bit of reference point here. If I were to look at the good old POB, and I was going to look at the notable here, Breath of Flames, 30% fire damage, 10% fire dot multi. Normally, this would be a big Giga Chad notable that I would want to find. Say I know where that is on the Krangle tree. Well, I'm going to end up going, and I'm going to miss out on 10 fire dot multi and 12% damage. The nodes leading up to the notable are almost as strong as the notable itself, and this is not necessarily even the, like, best case. Like, if I was looking over Heart of Flames, I'm still doing like a fire dot build, the nodes up to this notable are roughly 12, 16, like this is what, 60% fire damage, and the notable's 30% fire damage. The nodes leading up to the notable are even stronger, sort of thing. My point is, even if you know where every good notable is and you target those ones, the small nodes along the way, the likelihood they're relevant to your build or good for your build is very, very bad, because there's so many different archetypes in PoB. There's traps, there's mines, there's minions, there is totems, there is melee, there is caster, there's different versions of melee, claw, dagger, mace, axe, sword, staff. There's things pulling you in so many possible different directions. The likelihood there's a specific node that applies to one archetype and not the other 15 possible archetypes, you get what I'm saying, right? Your odds of this tree giving you usable nodes is bad, which ends up meaning, in my opinion, you're losing roughly 50% player power. That's just if I'm guessing. It's probably more, even if you know exactly where the good nodes are. There is a scenario where the tree just generates perfectly. Like, you have some stupid RNG scenario where every travel node is percent life and it's relevant to your build. That's not going to happen with a randomized tree, though. That's just not statistically a possibility in all reality, right? Point is, even if you know the whole tree, you're still going to make a bad character because the randomized is too much of a detriment. And I say this knowing full well because, well, I have an example of it. The community came together and put together literally bit by bit the majority of the notables on the tree. So we know where a lot of the stuff is. And I went in, and when I made this character I'm on right now, I went through and I planned my tree around nodes that I thought were good in my area that I could grab. So I intentionally did it with the advantage of knowing my tree to a large extent. And the character I made is still pretty freaking bad, even though I also feel like I have strong ascendancy nodes. I feel like Gathering Winds, and I feel like Radiant Crusade. I feel like those are strong ascendancy nodes. I feel for the fact that Terminus Est is a strong weapon going in and going through Act 8. I played this character through Act 8. It didn't feel strong at all. I felt like I was pretty freaking weak, and Terminus Est should have been an OP weapon for Act 8, along with having ascendancy nodes that are quite good, should be strong for Act 8. But even though I was grabbing all of these nodes that, granted, you might look at this and say, Sentinel, why would you ever grab Sentinel? Well, I had a life mastery. I needed a life mastery. And quite frankly, for the nodes I had available to me, even with what was in range, that felt like a strong notable to pick. So that should give you some frame of reference of what we're working with here. Because my small nodes are projectile damage, accuracy, two-hand melee, skill effect duration, chance to free shock ignite, trap throw speed, int, life, dual wield, life, dex, crit multi with daggers, dex, int, attack speed, trap damage, bow attack speed, percent energy. It's all over the place, and 90% of it is just straight up worthless for my character. It's just very, very weak for my character, not remotely usable. So basically what I'm saying is the premise of Krangle League, which is maybe we can make these cool, interesting characters. That's what I was thinking going into it. I think that's what most people were thinking when they were thinking about this event. They're like, man, we probably could make some crazy unique possibilities. I don't think we realized, and I didn't realize, how truly detrimental the weakness is of having randomized small passives. So first off, if you're going to improve Krangle League or you're going to make it viable, I think you need one of two things. I think you either need to literally double every node on the tree. This Prismatic Skin, 4 max res. This Holy Dominion, 24 all res, 48% damage. This has to be, the notables and the passives on the tree have to be virtually double what they are in order to carry how randomized and how rough it is to pick up nodes that are worthless on like 85% of your points. You have to be able to have some counterbalance in power. That's one solution where you don't have to figure out how to code the randomizer in a better way. The other solution number 2, is say you move charisma to this wheel. The wheel should have normal charisma small passives. It should have reservation efficiency. It should have the aura effect. If you have life over here, it should have 2 life small notables here. You have to keep clusters together along with their masteries. Because if you find one good notable, you should have the supporting passives that are roughly a half of that power's cluster. Because it feels really bad to say, oh, 10% life, that's a good life node for me to grab, and then spend 3 passives just to get 10% life. That's 3%, that's 3.3% life per passive point. That doesn't feel good, but in terms of what is available, if you went through and you looked at the tree, that is still an optimal choice, and it's very, very weak, right? It's very, very weak. Because normally, if you're picking up a life cluster, you'd be picking up 20% for 3 points. It would be over double the value of the 3.3% life per point, if you catch my drift. The point I'm making is quite simply, the power level of the tree is too weak. It's something where no matter what ascendancy combination you have, you could pick your 4 perfect ascendancy nodes and say, if I stuck these together, I will have the most broken build. You could pick that, and the tree would still counterbalance it, and you'd end up with a weak build from a stock standard mid-tier ascendancy, in my opinion, because of how weak the tree is in and of itself. Over time, eventually, with enough OP gear, maybe you could make up for it with that ascendancy, but let's be realistic here. This is a 1-week event, or even if it was a 1-month event, you're not going to put together the gear good enough to counterbalance the lack of power. And quite frankly, the optimal solution is, well, you ignore the tree and you just path to 3 large clusters. And I just don't think that's very fun. I don't think that's very fun. I think it kind of ruins the theme of the taking advantage of the cool randomized tree. So my suggestion quite simply is, double the nodes on the tree, something that will counterbalance the weakness of all the bad nodes, all the travel passes you have to take that are giving you basically nothing, and counterbalance it with some level of power. Or you have to have some level of organization where the randomizer still has coherent clusters that make sense, so that way when you're grabbing a small node, it leads to a good node and it all synergizes and your build works. The counterpoint is, oh, but int, strength, dex, those are travel passes anyways. You get those in your build. You're not losing that much power. That's not really the case. Int, dex, strength, in most of the characters they serve a purpose, and it is functional power, whereas something like crit for spells on an attack-based character is no power. Generally, for example, if I was a Marauder character, I would expect to get somewhere in the range of like 300 to 400 strength, just because my tree paths through so much strength. Maybe I get a strength or 2 roll on my gear. And that represents 150 to 200 flat life. That is power. And it also represents 60 to 80% melee damage. That is power. And you're giving that up for nodes that give you 0 in terms of power. Because there's so much, basically, archetypes. There's so many possibilities in Path of Exile. There's a lot of nodes that are specific to one build that is going to be irrelevant for the 15 other builds, if that makes some sense. So, to start off with, some version of either Krangle the tree a bit less so masteries and clusters stick together, or just literally double every node, and that way when you find a cool node, you're like, bam, let me put that in the character. I'm okay with grabbing all this crap in between because it has some level of counterbalance, because I can afford to grab all the trash in between and then pick up this big cool doubled power notable sort of thing. That's my 2 solutions. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe you have better solutions yourself. The other thing I would say about the Krangled league, what could improve it, playing it blind I think is bad. I think it is bad, and I'll go over why. For me, myself, I played it blind initially, and you'll see I have 2 level 30 characters. Before the community came together and they made this magical list where you could actually plan out your character to some extent. Before the community member, there was somebody crazy enough to actually import this data into a tree viewer so we could actually visually plan out our character. Before that even happened, you had to play it blind. And where does playing it blind? Well, my first character, this level 35 witch I made, I played it blind, okay? And I have a bunch of nodes that aren't really good. I have a bunch of mana, and I have no damage. And then I got to my ascendancy tree, and I said, maybe my ascendancy will save me. Maybe, just maybe, my ascendancy will save me. I path 1 point to here. The first node I see is Master Alchemist, a node that is virtually useless until you get good Flask, which is something you're not going to be able to afford to craft until you're like early white maps. And I'm not getting to early white maps on this build. I'm getting hard stuck in the campaign with a level of power. And then I said, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, I'll have a bit enough respect points. I can go for this node and check what's over here. Then I see Rupturing, a node that is basically, as far as I'm concerned, it actively makes your build worse because it makes you build bleed in a way that is bad. It's something where it's like, oh, that sounds like it could be good, but the end result is you just end up making a character that's bad because you try to build around Rupturing. And then the next node I respec and find is Warbringer, which is actually by itself a viable node, and it's cool and all, but has 0 synergy, and I would still need another 5 regret points if I was even going to take this, and I would have to somehow turn this mana tree into an attack-based character, and then I have no attack-based synergy. And my point is, I get to this point, I've invested 5 hours into this painful leveling process where my tree sucks, and my gear sucks, and I have a character that sucks, and I can't fix it, because regret orbs, they are very rare to drop when you're only going through the campaign at a snail's pace. And I have a bricked character, and I have to say, you know what? I have to throw away my time. My best bet is to just re-roll. So I re-roll a Marauder, and guess what? Pretty much the same exact thing happens where I grab a bunch of stuff that doesn't really work together because I'm doing it blind, and I have a character that's bad, and viably, I am stuck. I'm not going to progress this character in a meaningful way, and it's just painful. My solution essentially is let the PoE players plan the build, like let the tree be fully revealed. That's one way to do it. Or make the drop rate of regret orbs straight up 100 times. So when you expect to drop 1 regret orb, you're instead dropping 100. So you have a chance to fix or save your character when you've spec'd it into so many bad nodes, sort of thing. Because quite frankly, the blind tree, although the idea for it to be a race event and you work through with a team and stuff, ultimately the event doesn't, like, PoE players, we aren't team players. We don't want to do a race event. We want something fun to do in the meantime, waiting for the new league. It doesn't really end up sticking. I know these were meant to be niche events, but this event I think could be really cool in the future, and I would want to see this run again in the future because it's unique, it's interesting, it offers the possibilities of fun, And the fact you have to do blind tree with the normal red orb drop rate, it's just too punishing. It turns it into an absolute slog because of the bad character you're going to make. And ultimately, the community is just going to put together a full tree anyway, so I'm on the side of the tree should just be fully revealed, so that way, going into the event, we can plan some cool little starters around it. We can be like, man, I thought about this cool build that has Pious Path and Nature's Boon on a Juggernaut. I'm gonna make a build around that, and people can get excited about it. You know how there's league start hype, and there's questions of unknown of what could be made with this new thing. Well, that would probably be some level of that element involved in an event like this, if you could plan it going into it, and you'd have some idea of what you're gonna make, and you could have some excitement around that. So I think you either give us the regret orbs or you just don't do it blind. I don't think doing it blind is a net positive. I think weirdly for the competition aspect, yes, sure, it's an asynchronous competition, so ultimately people are just going to put together the tree anyways, so does it really make sense? And like, I don't know. That's my main thought process of make the tree revealed so everyone can play it, or just give us an insane regret or drop rate so that way we can actually fix our characters instead of just feeling like we wasted 5 hours to make a really, really bad character because it's so bricked beyond comprehension. Just food for thought on my opinion on some helpful things to do for Krangled League. So the tree, either fixing the tree and making it more powerful by doubling the passives, or have the scrambler have it scrambled in a way where clusters stick together and there's still some semblance of power where I don't feel like I'm losing all my power just to get to one okay notable and still have a very bad build. And then the other thing is, don't have it be blind, so that way players can plan their builds ahead of time. I'm making this video solely because this event represents a unique, really interesting, fun thing that I think a lot of people are excited about, and I think a lot of people would be excited about doing again if you have events in the future, which maybe you will need. Maybe you'll need to delay a league. And if you run this back with a few changes, I think it could be a lot of fun for people, especially considering of how unique and interesting, and actually like it leans into the fantasy of what Path of Building or what Path of Exile is good at, which is making cool builds in Path of Exile. And I hope you guys run it again. That's just my feedback on stuff that I think could improve the event. I'm sure there's going to be people that have their own feedback on maybe they like the event as is, maybe they're okay, they want the grind, they want the slog of it, just having characters that are barely viable to do white maps. I don't know. I'd rather have just some broken stuff on a voided league and be able to make something fun. And I think most PoE players are more on my end of the spectrum of just wanting something fun to do in the meantime waiting for a league. I know this is sort of a long ranty video or on my basically thoughts on what could improve the Krangle League, but those are the main ones that come to mind. Maybe this is something we get to see in the future. I would hope we do, but until next time, I'll see you later, Exiles. Hopefully you're enjoying Krangle League, or maybe you'll enjoy it in the future when we have it again, I hope. Take care, Exiles. Peace out.